July 10th, 2021, somewhere in Nevada in front of a roaring crowd, a bone snapped in two. The sound of the fracture heard around the world, casuals and fanatics. Everyone remembers when Conor McGregor broke his leg. And as he sat, angry and crippled on the canvas, yelling obscenities and making allegations that certain wives were in places that they shouldn't be,
your wife is in me DMs, hey baby!
Another man was being ushered out, victorious. But only intermediate level MMA fans and above will know about the guy that did this to him. The man that defeated Conor McGregor not once, but twice. Dustin the Diamond Poirier. His impressive 4.3 million followers on Instagram is but a candle compared to the sun that is Conor McGregor's 50 million. But Instagram followings aside, while one of them is knocking out mascots and sucker punching old men, the other is busy building a beautiful family, a charity, and a hot sauce empire. He's a family man, a man of the community, but to know his humble beginnings in comparison to where he is today, now that's wild. Overcoming adversity, unwavering commitment, emotionally in control, a man that gives back. In a dark world where young men are confused and unmotivated, Dustin's journey serves as a lighthouse, and his rocky past, a guide to a brighter future. Lafayette, Louisiana. 10-year-old Dustin Poirier and his mother find themselves sitting in court together. It's not that she was in trouble and she just couldn't find a babysitter to watch little Dustin while she received her sentencing. Dustin was the reason she was there. This little 10-year-old boy had knocked out a 15-year-old in a backyard brawl.
Dustin knocked out his teeth and broke his jaw, and he was 5 years older than Dustin.
Street fights and chaos were just a typical Monday afternoon in the life of little Dustin.
I don't even know how many. I'm not bragging or happy, but I definitely got into some scuffles.
And like most kids in situations like that, of course, he ended up dropping out and never graduating high school.
I've been in boot camp, juvenile detentions, and programs, and all this stuff that's supposed to help you, and I mean, that didn't help.
But luckily, Dustin would be introduced to a man named Tim Crater, a man who had been a UFC veteran himself and immediately saw massive potential in Dustin.
One of my guys said, hey, this kid right here, he's unbelievable. He's an amateur, but you need to go spar with him. So I put my mouthpiece in, I put my gloves on, and me and Dustin did a couple rounds. And I went in the bathroom, and I spit my mouthpiece out, and a bunch of blood came out of my mouth. Looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, this kid's gonna be a fucking world champion.
Young guy, dropout, no education, but he works like a dog and goes pro in the MMA scene, fighting his first fight in the UFC at the tender age of 21, already having racked up 8 professional wins.
He's finally found what he's been looking for all of this time. I know that he has been waiting his whole life to climb up something and put his hands in the air.
So with the deck stacked against him, law troubles, high school dropout, broken home, Dustin's no-quit mentality helped him overcome every single obstacle in his path, and that very same bulldog mindset would continue to serve him throughout the course of his entire career in the UFC.
When I found something that I wanted and that I really was gonna chase, no matter what roadblock was in front of me, I would break it down and go get it.
Now, statistically speaking, Dustin wins most of his fights. But every so often, he will run into adversity in the form of an unlucky knockout, an undefeated Russian man, or coming full circle, Conor McGregor. Dustin first encountered Conor when he was 10 fights deep in the UFC all the way back in 2014. And Conor is arguably one of the best trash talkers in the sport.
This guy TKOs people. When I knock people out, they don't move. They're like, who the is that guy? Who the is that? I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the he wants.
And poor Dustin just wasn't ready for the onslaught.
September 27th, I'm gonna rip Dustin's head clean off, It makes no difference about nothing. Just a little pea head.
You can just see the look on his face. He's already aggravated. He's already wasting precious mental energy. And as a result, he gets knocked out in the very first 2 minutes of the first round.
If anything adversity's taught me in the past, is when times are good, be grateful. And when times like this, be graceful.
Now, adversity would be Dustin's constant companion over the next 7 years, whether it was through hard training or tough lessons learned in the octagon. But the cool thing about Dustin, who is aptly nicknamed the Diamond, is that he never loses fights consecutively. If he loses one fight, he comes back stronger in his next, and his rise continues. So much like an actual diamond, he becomes more polished and hardened under pressure. And all those roadblocks and hard times in the octagon would lead to his most shining moment of all, when 7 years later he would have a chance to face the man who had clowned him in under 2 minutes. I still remember watching the Conor-Dustin rematch. I was in a room full of about 30 of my constituents, and there was maybe 2 people in the entire room rooting for Dustin, myself included. And were it not for all those losses, those setbacks, those heartbreak moments, Dustin would never have been able to level up to the version of himself that was ready to beat Conor and avenge his loss. And not only did he avenge it once, but twice, back to back.
Your wife is in me DMs, hey baby!
Now speaking of wives, another way that Dustin shines is in his level of commitment. We've all seen the stats. Apparently when it comes to spouses, it's really hard to keep one. The divorce rate in America is just under 50%, and your likelihood of divorce goes up even more if you come from divorced parents yourself, which as I mentioned earlier, Dustin did. Dustin was married when he was just 20 years old, and statistically speaking, and given his warrior temperament, the likelihood he stayed with his wife, very low. And that's not even factoring in the fame and the money and the fortune that came with all the success he was experiencing in the UFC. There's no way they're still together, right? Well, they very much are. They run a nonprofit together, and from what we can see, they are still doing very well. The success and the reward of having a beautiful family was made possible only because of Dustin's level of commitment. A relationship forged in fire that has lasted through the years.
It's amazing to grow through life with somebody like that. You know, she drove me, I didn't even have a car. She drove me to Arkansas for my first amateur fight back in 2006. She's been there since the first one.
And no Irishman can ever get between that. His ability to commit is also the sole reason that he went from a nobody from Louisiana to a future UFC Hall of Famer. It's the reason he has a beautiful daughter that he gets to raise with his beautiful wife. In life, it's easy to get excited about something for a week. That new diet, that new exercise plan after New Year's. It's easy to keep swiping on that dating app rather than devoting yourself to one person. What's really hard is committing yourself day in and day out to being a great husband, an amazing father, and a consummate professional. And that's exactly what Dustin is, no matter the ups or the downs. And speaking of downs, I know I keep harping on it, but let's revisit that first time that Dustin fought Conor McGregor. At the time, Conor was up and coming. He's very dangerous. Everyone was picking him to win, but in a fight, just by nature, anyone has a chance to win. A fist colliding with a skull or a jaw at the perfect time, at the perfect speed, can result in a knockout and a win for you. We call it the puncher's chance. But the thing is, Dustin had way more than just a puncher's chance. He had a full skill set to beat Conor, and not just on the judges' scorecards, but in devastating fashion. Up to that point, he'd already proved himself to be a very competent grappler with clean boxing on top of that. So it's very reasonable to think that the fight could have gone in his favor. But something happened in the lead up to that first fight between them that caused Dustin to falter. It caused him to walk into that cage lacking something that is essential to peak manliness. That thing, of course, being emotional control. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that, I have more emotional control than Dustin, because props to anyone that walks into a cage, gets the door locked behind him in front of a crowd of thousands of people, and pretty much fights to the death. But in this profession, emotional control is vital. When two guys are fighting, my bet is typically on the person that looks cool, calm, and collected. So what happened to cause this momentary lapse in Dustin's normally solid mental game? Well, put yourself in Dustin's shoes. You've grown up on the mean streets of Lafayette. You've been brawling since you were a kid, living in a world where disrespecting someone can cause you to get your wig split, as they say in prison. But somehow, through adversity, commitment, sweat, and blood, this young Bayou boy had found himself on the big stage in the spotlight, taking on the up-and-coming, larger-than-life personality Conor McGregor. Up to this point, all of Dustin's opponents in the UFC had been relatively respectful, but Conor was not here to take part.
We're here to take over!
And part of taking over for Conor means mentally destroying his opponents before they even fight.
Look, don't get me wrong, I like the kid. He's a quiet little hillbilly from the back ass of nowhere.
It is. It's personal and it's business. It's a grudge match. I don't like this guy.
I'm sure he grew up in a circus or a fair. He's a nice little kid. His chin is deteriorating. A gust of wind and he does the chicken dance. You know what I mean?
With each verbal lashing, he grew more furious, more unhinged, and less prepared to perform in the octagon.
We met each other in the lobby or whatever, and he said, I'm ready or something, and I said, yeah, get ready you're ready to fall, or I don't know what I said, but then he was like nervous and fidgety. I could sense panic in the young boy. I could see it in him, you know what I mean? You can't hide it, you can hide it with words, but you can never hide it with your eyes and with your body language. It's impossible.
I've never disliked somebody that much that I'm ever fought.
And because I already mentioned earlier what happened in that first fight, we already know the outcome. Dustin took his loss like a man, but you could tell he definitely was not happy about it. Now let's fast forward to their final rematch. We're gonna skip the second because in the second rematch, Conor was uncharacteristically respectful. Very boring trash talk lead up. But before their third fight, Dustin would have a chance to show just how far he'd come in the realm of emotional control, because Conor was trying his very best to get back inside Dustin's head and make things personal.
You're only a little. Your wife is your husband.
No matter what though, Dustin remained cool.
You used to be a lot better than that, man. The trash talk was a lot better than that.
I mean, look at this. He's ice cold in there. And we all know how this ended. Conor on the ground, leg broken, yelling obscenities, and Dustin collecting a fat paycheck and putting this dark chapter of his life behind him. Emotional control. You need it when you're fighting Conor McGregor. You need it when that guy cuts you off on the highway. And you'll definitely need it when your baby is screaming in your ear at 3 a.m. for no reason. Which brings me to the most important reason that Dustin Poirier should be looked up to by young men everywhere. And it's simply this. Dustin owns a charity called the Good Fight Foundation. He says it right here on his website. I am a fighter. It's what I do. Now I want to fight the good fight for those who can't. After all his fights, he always sells his entire fight kit to make money, which he then donates to the community. And that, I believe, is the hallmark of a true man. Living for someone else and giving of yourself to others.
It makes me proud to be able to give them a good life through fighting. I'd set myself on fire to keep them warm, you know?
Whether it's his family, his training partners, his community, he is a force for good everywhere he goes. He's a very different kind of man compared to a lot of the modern male role models that we have. Admittedly, some of these guys are pretty cool looking. They seem to have it all. But ultimately, it seems like they're just living for themselves. Fast cars, loose women, those things don't make a man, as enticing as that stuff looks. This is what makes a man. And you just know that this little girl is gonna grow up to be a contributing member of society because that's what she saw her dad do. That's what she saw her mom do, and it's what she's gonna do. And by the way, Dustin, if you are watching, just say the word and we can arrange a future union between my son and your daughter. Combine our houses in holy matrimony. I think we could really, truly build a dynasty. And speaking of dynasties, no one, and I mean no one, will ever be capable of building a dynasty unless they unlock a crucial power that lies dormant within every person. I made a video about it right here. It's all about this man and what it takes to be something great. I spent a lot of time making it. I'm proud of it, put my heart and soul into it, and I just know you're gonna like it. I encourage you to click it, watch it, enjoy it, and Godspeed.